Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this video, I'm going to be looking at the full moon in Libra and the setting for that, which includes some other really quite important configurations, but from the perspective of all 12 signs. So everybody gets a chance to think about what does this mean for me personally. Now, one of the things, if you're not used to my channel, you've never met me before, I kind of do this mixture because I think it's important everyone knows about astrology, and the point of contact, the first entry we get into astrology is often, oh, I'm a Sun Taurus or I'm a Libra, tell me all about myself. But of course, it's just one part of a much bigger picture. So what I aim to do on these general kind of videos is to give a little bit more depth and perspective on the astrology. So you're seeing a little bit more about it, which brings up the next issue. And I find often in the comments that somebody will be concerned about, am I talking about, they've got Libra rising, should they be looking at that part of the video, or should it be their sun sign, which is Capricorn? They get confused. And I always say, well, you should always look at your sun sign, because I write from the sun sign perspective and I look at where all the other planets would be according to that sun's position, but also from the kind of personality that you are and the ruler of your sign. That's going to give it more importance. So always look at your sun sign. But if you know what your ascending sign is, and so you know, for instance, on this video, we're going to be talking about the full moon in Libra. If you know which house that full moon is occurring in, then you'll want to be looking at that or listening to that particular sign. And the other thing that I do get asked a lot, and you'll see it in the comments, is what house system do I use? Well, on a video like this, there is no house system. I'm just showing where the planets are according to Libra, Scorpio, Aquarius, whatever. So you've got a picture of where these things are. As an astrologer, then I work with the Placidus system, which is a quadrant system. It's a way of dividing up the the horoscope into 12 segments. And I prefer a quadrant system because it takes the midheaven as the highest point and the ascendant, and then we see those divisions being made accordingly. And that goes along with my preference. But there are other house systems, and a lot of astrologers using whole sign systems and all sorts of regimentanas, whatever. And I'm sure they're all terrific astrologers, and it's just they're comfortable with that one. That's the one that they feel works, and they're happy to use it. But don't get too caught up in house systems, at least certainly not on this particular video. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to start off with Libra, and I'm going to put this chart on the screen so that you can see where this full moon and some of the other things that I'm going to be talking about are. Now, the moon is in Libra, and you can probably see the little symbol. It looks exactly like a moon in the side of Libra, and the sun at the opposite point. And the sun being close to Chiron. And also we can see that configuration is linked up to Mars, the planet up in the 12 o'clock position of the chart. Now, I've talked about Chiron, and in fact, I've talked about all of these configurations on my other video about the full moon in Libra. So, I'm not going to spend time talking about all of that when it's in a separate video. What I'm going to talk about with you first and foremost is relationships. The sun, as it moves through Aries, and it went into Aries on the 20th of March, it will exit Aries on the 19th of April. All through this time, the sun has been in the 7th solar house. This is all about relationships, and this full moon is all about relationships. And we think of that theme, closure and completion, then we get something done and dusted. This is a good time to form a partnership when you're signing on the dotted line and saying, I'm committed to this venture, I'm committed to this partnership, I am committed to you. We are now a unit. So that full moon can symbolize that. But a full moon can also end something. And it's just as appropriate at this time for a relationship to be at the end of its journey. It's done its time. And sadly, I mean, that's what happens in life, doesn't it? Whether it's a friendship, whether it's your role with a company, whether it is a business partnership, whether it's a marriage, sometimes we just can't go any further. The bus has stopped at the terminus, the love bus has stopped at the terminus, and that's it, it's done. So it is a good time to accept that some things are over. Now, in a way, whenever there's a full moon in your sign, you are empowered. And that moon is in the first house or the first solar house, and it's pointing directly at you. So it is time, Libra, to get off the fence. You know, Librans are great fence sitters. So it's time you got off the fence and made a decision. And helping you in this regard is that position of Mars. It's saying, you know, you've got to act. And if there is opposition and conflict, you're going to have to deal with it. Libra doesn't like conflict. It wants peace. It wants warring factions to come together and make nice. But life isn't like that. There are ugly things in life. And on this occasion, whatever it is that represents the conflict in your life, Libra, you have to meet it. You have to tackle it. And the Mars-Pluto opposition is about digging deep. And you will have to dig deep inside yourself or dig deep into the situation to find what is required to deal with the conflict that you're facing. And it could be any kind of conflict. It could be to do with your health. It could be to do with your work. It could be to do with a member of the family. Or we could be right in the area of relationships, and there's something that really needs to be dealt with. Now, there is also a possibility that in this period of time covered by the full moon, and we're looking at the slightly before the full moon, maybe week beginning the 7th of April, right through to the new moon of the 27th of April, we're looking at things closing down and ending. So you may find that something happens and that fits the bill. But let's not forget that life is a series of beginnings and endings. That's what life is. And we can't go on to the next act on our stage of life, if we don't close the curtain and get rid of the scenery. You know, that's what we have to do. It's part of life. But it might be quite a tough period for you, Libra, especially, I think, in light of other people who are not dancing to your tune or who are seeming to oppose you. You know, life isn't at this point in time necessarily all lovey-dovey. And even if you're getting married or getting engaged, there's going to be conflict with somebody around this time, which is kind of spoiling that idea of harmony. But it is what it is. And remember, if you've seen my other video, the proximity of the sun to Chiron is all about accepting what we can't fix, managing our pain and our frustration, and allowing it to grow into something beautiful. Scorpio, this full moon for you is on the axis of the 6th house and the 12th house. So the moon is in the 12th house, the sun is in the 6th house. Now, I've drawn other things in this chart for you to see. At the top of the chart, in the 12 o'clock position, we can see Mars, and we can see some red lines drawn between the sun and Pluto. We can see there's a triangle there. And that is an angle of tension. It's a very, very important connection. It is about push coming to shove. It is about getting rid of something that should have been got rid of a long time ago. And it is about cleansing your life. It is about getting rid of toxicity wherever it lurks. And that is going along at the same time as the full moon here, which is, if we see the moon, that's pretty obvious, the symbol of the moon opposite the sun. And this is an axis that has a lot to do with your life purpose. It has a lot to do with your spiritual values, a lot to do with the kind of responsibilities that you have in life. And it also has to do with health and well-being, because this axis is about the systems that are in place for your life. And our health is a system that must be there for our well-being. And it's also other systems in our life, including work, that give our life shape and texture. It's about the responsibilities that we have, that we need responsibilities because it makes us a people of value. So this full moon is all about those things. For some of you, it is going to be a bit of a health issue. Is it that you've been ignoring a problem? Is it that you've pushed yourself too far? You've burnt the candle at both ends. And at the time of this full moon, it's like you're burnt out. Whatever it is that comes up around the time of this full moon is a realization that things need to change. So this is just one area of life. And, you know, when we are made aware that we've got a problem, then that problem needs to be given, you know, we need to see it in order for us to kind of fix it. And this to me seems very appropriate, given that the sun is close to Chiron, and Chiron is our existential wound, the thing we can't fix. So this full moon is emphasizing that in terms of your 6-12 axis, which is saying maybe we can't fix this health condition. But guess what? You know, we can learn to live with it. We can learn to manage it, and we can learn to do things that help us to live with it a lot better. And we can stretch that out, Scorpio, and think not only about health, but about other situations in our life that we can't fix. We keep trying, we can't fix it. But coming back to what I was saying about the other configuration, the Mars, the Pluto, and the Sun, this is the time to get rid of toxicity, to get rid of things that are poisoning our lives. And that can be behaviors, it can be health habits, it can be people in our lives, friendships, it can be relationships. Anything that is toxic is bad for us. And this whole picture here that we're looking at in the center of this circle is about recognizing what is toxic and doing something about it. And remember, this is not just on the 13th of April, which happens to be full moon day. That full moon is setting, you know, at the full moon, then we have a waning cycle beginning of 2 weeks. So we're looking at the whole of this period, right up to the new moon on the 27th of April, as a period when we might become aware of the things that are poisoning our lives, that aren't good for us. It's also a very spiritual full moon, this one, and coming as it does around Easter, then especially if you're that kind of religious in terms of what Easter means to you in the Christian religion, then this could be a time when your heart is very full and there's a lot of meaning spiritually that's going on or that you're acquiring. And the last thing we come to, regardless of your religion or your spiritual bearing, this is a time when I think what's going on in our lives is also showing us, you know, about what is our life purpose, and does our life have meaning and purpose? And if it doesn't, this full moon is all about how can I find that? How can I go about achieving that? Sagittarius. This full moon cuts across the axis of creativity and collaboration. The moon, which I'm sure you can see, the way I've drawn it in there, is in the 11th house of collaborations. And the sun at the opposite point, in the 5 o'clock position, is in the area of creativity. Now, a full moon on this axis is often about the end of a gestation period. So you come to the end of something that has been cooking for a while. The easiest way to look at gestation periods is the idea of a pregnancy, really. 9 months for a baby to grow in the womb and be ready for delivery. But there are lots of other things that we have as projects or friendships or love affairs, things that have been in preparation, that are gathering momentum, And it's at this time that we're ready to deliver. Now, if you've listened to my other video on this full moon, you'd have heard me talk about the new moon in Libra on October the 2nd, which was a solar eclipse, in relation to this full moon happening on the 13th of April. So there's a beginning and an ending. So think about the things that may have occurred around the October time, or they are ready to show you what they are capable of. So it's either a time of recognition that you've got something beautiful and you can now take it on to the next level. And that might be when we think about relationships and love affairs. After 6 months, you know each other pretty well. Is it time to become exclusive, or is it time to get engaged? Who knows? It's going to be different, but that would go with this cycle. But there are many, many other things you could look at as a gestation period, which began in the October time and is now at fruition. This particular axis of the horoscope is about the self, the inner self, but sort of like the inner child, I think, more than anything else. And you may find that your inner child is acting up at this full moon, because the moon, of course, is in the area of the higher self, if you like, or the collective, not the self so much. So there is this sense between your needs and all the things that you're feeling, and then thinking about other people and you in the context of a bigger picture, higher collective versus self and the little me, so to speak. So you may find that the issues and the situations that are coming up at this time really do center on that sense of you, the small self, versus the bigger self, you as a single entity versus the group and other people, the collective. But also, I think it is about, and because of the proximity of the sun to Chiron, and so often chironic wounds are those that started in childhood. When we think about the inner child within us, this may be a profound understanding of what you're facing at this time that is causing you distress, maybe having to do with an episode or an event or something experienced in childhood. And that might actually illuminate the situation and help you really manage it a lot better. But this could also be a time of birth, when you've come to the end of a gestation period, something is ready to be born. And so, as you know, the pangs of labor as you deliver the baby are painful, but once that baby comes through the other side, it's fabulous, joy in abundance. So you might like to think of this full moon as also being the labor pains before a birth of something beautiful. Capricorn. Now, this full moon for you is one of 4 full moons in a year that's in a strategic place. It's in one of the cardinal houses. You can see the moon there in the horoscope. It's in the 10th house. And the 10th house, the 4th house, the 1st house, and the 7th house are what we call the cardinal houses. They're action houses, they're doing houses. And when full moons, or indeed planets, are passing through any of these cardinal houses, they have a little bit more of an importance to us. We respond to the events that they are the signature upon a little bit more. They hold more importance for us. So this full moon is on the life direction axis, the moon being in the area of career and your place in the world, the sun being in the area of home and family, the roots of life, the foundations of the future. Now, the sun has been moving through this area since the 20th of March. So Capricorn, it may have been a period when there's been a lot going on in the family, or a lot going on the home front. Maybe there've been lots of people coming and going. Maybe you're painting and decorating. maybe you're trying to get a mortgage rearranged, or maybe you're moving house, you know, whatever it is, there's activity on the home front. So now at the full moon, it's sort of saying, well, that's completed, or the sign of its ending is here inherent in this full moon. It is a good time to end a chapter, either on the family front or in regard to the career. So we could think of, for instance, retirement. And, you know, whether or not you are retiring, or whether you are thinking about things to do with your retirement, or whether it is the end of a job, something that you have been expecting, you know, whether you keep your position, but you're on to some other new kind of project that's related to your job, or whether, well, this is it. This is the end of a job. You've got to find another one. That's what this full moon could also signify. You can't really separate each end, because both ends are significant. Because if you think about the roots of life, they support your tree of life, the top of the tree meaning where your aims are, what you're hoping to be, what you want to do out in the world. So the fact that something happens to your family, happens to your home, happens, you know, in regard to everything that supports you, you know, that is going to have an effect on, you know, how you are in the world out there. So they are connected in that way. And as I said in the, you know, when I was in the other video, the idea of closure and completion is always relevant to any full moon. So it'd be good to close on a property, for instance, if you're house hunting. Or it might be a time to say, you know what, we've got to move, that, you know, we've either outgrown the where we live, or, you know, the costs of where we are too great. But that full moon isn't in isolation. We've also got this big configuration with the sun squaring Pluto, Pluto opposing Mars. And, you know, we're looking at this looming from the time of the full moon as it gets towards that new moon on the 27th of April. Push comes to shove. I've used that a lot with a Mars-Pluto aspect, and it's a good one to use, because it's like, you know, I've got to do this now. I'm not going to wait any longer. I've taken long enough. It's time, which is a good motivation. But we also get that feeling, you know, I can't stand this anymore. I'm done with it. So there are many, many ways to interpret a Mars-Pluto, either in the sense of giving everything to something in order to achieve it, ambition, passion, all of that, or the sense of reaching the end of the line and being totally done with it. And it is going to vary from Capricorn to Capricorn. You know, Capricorns are going to feel different. You know, you're different people, different ages, different life experiences. But I think it's very good for Capricorn to realize that you can't take everything with you. Now, we're not talking about death here. We're talking really about Capricorn being a sign that likes, you know, old things, likes tradition, likes things that have been part of your history. And that can amount to clutter. And if there's one thing that a Mars-Pluto opposition is good at, it's getting rid of clutter. So is it time for you to declutter the house and to see what you've got? Because when we get rid of all those objects, we are sort of clearing the decks. We've cleared away things we can see more clearly. But it may be that you've got a big job on your hands and you've been putting it off, and it takes energy and time. And maybe it is related to the home, and you've got to put things together and, you know, get rid of them. But you can use that analogy. You can use it as a metaphor to getting rid of what you don't need. That's what this big configuration is. And it is, or goes hand in glove with the full moon, which is also about closure and completion and getting rid of, or putting behind you things that have, you know, done their time. You know, that's an end of a chapter. I'm looking forward to my new one. So I think the whole of this arrangement that I put in here for you to see pretty well sums up what this pattern is, and this all-important period of April. Aquarius. Now, Aquarius, for you, as we see this, we can see that the full moon itself, and the moon is, I think, pretty obvious in my little drawing there, is on the axis of communication. Now, it also encompasses things like travel, the exchange of information, the acquisition of knowledge. It's about what's going on in and around your life, but also what's going on in the big wide world as well. So these are the themes that go with this particular full moon. Now, it might coincide with the idea of the end of a journey. Maybe you've done some traveling and you're coming back home, or maybe you've done some traveling and you've arrived at a destination. So whatever it is, we can use that analogy and see that things have been, you've been traveling, you've been on a journey, and you are getting near the end of that journey. And this is where it gets interesting, and certainly if you haven't seen my other video, it's well worth listening to, because the new moon in Libra, which took place on the 2nd of October, and it was a solar eclipse, roughly 6 months ago, things that began around that time are ready for completion now around the 13th of April. So that journey that I've been referring to being over may well relate to something that began in the October of last year and is now done and dusted. Full moons have a lot on this axis, have a lot to do with our outlook. So we need to change our outlook periodically, whether we do that quite literally and we travel or live in a different place so that we're looking out of a different window. We've got a different window on our world, so we can do it literally. But it's also time to, have a shower in terms of freshening up our mindset and thinking, you know what, I've been looking at this situation this way for far too long. I need to look at it from a whole other direction. And that's rather a good thing, because as I often say about changing our outlook, when we change our perception of something, we change its outcome. And whatever happens around this full moon, whether it brings situations that have been simmering up to boiling point, it really is an opportunity to see where there needs to be new thinking on something, and with new thinking come new solutions and new outcomes, and that may be one of the most important things in this kind of arrangement we have here. But the full moon story isn't just the full moon, it's also where you see those red lines in that triangle going on here. And we see Pluto in Aquarius in the 9 o'clock position. At the opposite point, 3 o'clock, we've got Mars in Leo, and the red lines joining the sun here, that's the sign for the sun, in Taurus. This is an angle of tension, it's a T-square. It will be building all through the second half of April. And it is about things reaching a crescendo. And when things reach a crescendo, that's either the most wonderful time ever. Think about that musically. Think about when we hear something that's building to a crescendo, you can kind of feel, oh, I can't wait for this sound that's going to come at the end of this song or whatever it is. And there it is in its full glory. And it can be a beautiful thing. But also we think of things coming to a tipping point. And that's the point at which there's got to be change. And with Pluto in your sign, especially if you are a January Aquarian, and especially if you have a birthday 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd of January, Pluto is very much on your case, and it is presiding over transformation in many different areas of your life, and it's going to be different for different Aquarians. For some, it's about the family, it's about children. For others, it's about a job. For others, it's about a romantic relationship. Not everybody has the identical, picture, scenario. but what is happening is the same. And Pluto is your core, if you like. Your core values are changing. Something is affecting your core. And as you go through these experiences that challenge you, then you are evolving. And you can look at that spiritually, you could look at it in terms of consciousness, you can look at it in terms of a personality, you as a person. So all the things that you are going through at this time are aimed at helping you transform and grow. And even if you're relating to this and thinking, oh yeah, but I'm not a January birthday, you will have something in the early degrees of Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, or Taurus, because those are the degrees that are being affected by Pluto at the moment. Now, I've talked about this to many signs of the zodiac with this configuration. It's push comes to shove. And I think if you think about that, it has a strong message for you that it's time to do something about something. And you can tailor that to the situation that applies to. To some, it may be about work. For others, it may really be about a relationship. And, you know, when we get to full moons, that idea of closure and completion. And remember, if you've seen my other video, I talk about the Venus-Saturn conjunction, which is very good for marriages and contracts because it's binding agreements financially and emotionally. So we can see this set up in your solar chart here as having meaning for you that way as well. Relationships, you know, setting a seal on it. But given we've got all these other things going on with the Mars-Pluto opposition and the Sun squaring that point, we also have the idea that if things are toxic, they're not working, they're really, this is not the way forward, then it will be at this time that there are endings. And remember, that's also the hallmark of a full moon. Closure, completion, endings. Pisces. When we look at where this full moon is for you, it's in the 8th house. We've got the 2nd 8th axis being highlighted by the full moon. And this is the axis of self-worth. We're looking at the 2nd house where the sun is, and that has to do with you as a person. You know, what is my value? How do other people treat me? What is it that I offer? Are my offerings well received? It can also be finance. Am I stable and secure? Have I got enough money to keep a roof over my head? What are my values in life? Do I have assets, you know, material assets or spiritual assets, all sorts of other assets? And that's, while the sun is moving through the 2nd house, there tend to be a lot of issues related to all those things. When we look at the full moon, then we've got the opposite house, which is what I call a house of receivership, because this is where we receive things from other people, whether that's monies from other people, it's our financial partnerships, credit card companies, mortgage companies, banks, lending institutions. We have a contractual relationship with those organizations. It can also be the financial things we share with our partner or our business partner. So the idea of receivership is, you know, what is the other person giving to you? What is this relationship about? I mean, are you getting good value for what your input is from other people? It's also about intimacy. So don't be surprised if issues relating to sex and intimacy rear their head at this point. Is it a time when you are newly sexually awoken because you are ready to share that with another person? Or is it a point where you realize that there is no intimacy and that the relationship is hollow because there is no connection at that very intimate and profound level? So these are probably issues that are going to be around and about at this time. Now, of course, there may be lots of other things going on in your life. It's Easter, maybe you're meeting with the family, or maybe you're going to special celebrations, maybe even weddings, things like that. And if so, this full moon may still preside over a time of happiness, joy, fulfillment. But if you know anything, and I've lived long enough to have gone to a lot of weddings and to have had a lot of experience in life, these joyous occasions are also times of stress. And how often is somebody very put out at a wedding? So I think we might want to build that into, the events that you have going on at this time, Pisces. And if there are underground kind of rumblings of discontent, they're likely to erupt at this particular point. And as we look forward and we go to that Mars-Pluto opposition, squaring the sun, which is really going to be building from the time of this full moon, it is opening wounds. It is revealing what's been, lying rotten at the heart of something, and it doesn't smell very nice, and something has to be done about it. So, you can choose to take the opportunity to get to, expose what's rotten at the core and to therefore be able to deal with it. I mean, we look at Pluto for that idea of eliminating the negative, death and rebirth. We look at life and death. We look at the idea of day and night. They're extremes, but, getting rid of things that you don't need, whether it's clutter, getting rid of emotions that you don't need, getting rid of enmities that you don't need. This is all conducive to one's health and well-being. And I think that Mars-Pluto setup is conducive to getting you to see what is rotten at the core and what needs to be eliminated. Okay, Pisces? Aries, well, this full moon for you is an important full moon because the sun is in your sign and the moon is in your opposite sign. And as we look at the horoscope here, we are looking at the 1st and 7th house. So we're looking at the relationship axis. So this is a time of completion, as all full moons are about closure and completion. So it may be that you're ready to get married, you're ready to tie the knot, you're ready to move in with someone, you're ready to move a relationship that's been, on a semi-casual level to something a little more committed. That could be all in reference to the full moon. But we look too at the sun's proximity to Chiron, which I've covered in my other video on this full moon. And we see that it is exposing an existential wound or a pain of some description. And recognizing where that pain comes from is probably the importance of this full moon for you, the realization of what it is that's eating away at your core and causing, well, you pain, but also causing, trouble in your life out there. Sometimes we need to do this, especially as Aries, because I'm an Aries, as you know, and we do like to be doing things. And, we are that kind of person. And self-reflection is something that we don't find easy. But often when we're forced to really look at a situation that is causing us pain, it's amazing if we're honest enough, we can see our part in it. And maybe we can't do anything necessarily about it at the time, but just switching the light bulb on. And also in my other video, I talk about the idea of Chiron and our wound, our existential wound, being like that grit that gets into the oyster shell, causes the oyster pain, but grows into a pearl. This idea that once our pain can be beautiful. I know that sounds like a strange thing, but it's in managing it and realizing it's part of us, not outside us, that really is a key to resolving it. So yes, we've got a bit of a distance here, haven't we, between the idea of getting married and then looking at our existential pain. But actually, when we look at everything else that's in this particular chart, and we see Mars opposing Pluto, and that opposition being intersected by the sun in Taurus. That's going to be exact as we get a little bit on in April, around about the 23rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, exact with the new moon, which is the subject of my next video. And Mars being your ruling planet, Aries, then it's a call to arms. You have to do something about a situation. Now, the thing is, it doesn't mean going to war in the way that you would put the armor on and go out and strike and, use your blunderbuss. It's not really that kind of war. It's like recognizing that when you've got a big thing to tackle, it is a bit like getting ready for war. You've got to overcome it. So whatever it is in your life, Aries, and it is going to differ from Aries to Aries, then it's that fight and battle to overcome it, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a relationship issue, whether it's a professional matter, whether it's something to do with the kids, whether it's to do with your home, the garden, whatever it is, it's recognizing that you need to summon up all your energies and resources in order to combat it, get over it, overcome it. And that's the essence of that particular configuration. Now, at that time, the sun will be in the second house. So we have things to do with your security, stability, finance. So maybe what you're facing here is a financial matter. Maybe you've got to dig deep to pay an unexpectedly large bill, or maybe you're buying a property or some other really expensive item, and therefore you've got to dig deep to pay for it. But it could also be a time when you see that finances really need to be looked at, and all those things that are causing problems and difficulties need to be looked at and eliminated. Pluto, the principle of elimination, in order to make you financially healthy. So we've got finance in the mix, we've got relationships in the mix, and yeah, I use the term fire and fury, I think, related to this particular setup. That can be very useful if it's focused in the right direction, but it's destructive if it's not used well. And that may be another factor to factor in with this particular configuration. Taurus. The sun has been moving through Aries since the 20th of March, and that means it's been moving through your 12th solar house. And that is a time, ostensibly, when you need rest, recuperation, and regeneration. Now, of course, it's quite impossible to do that in these days because we've all got jobs and kids and responsibilities and all sorts of things that mean we just can't take off for a month. But you at least need to take time out for one evening, better still a weekend, and you think about these things that are restorative, whether it's mentally and spiritually restorative, or whether it's to do with your physical health, and this principle of regeneration, which is implicit in the other configuration that I've drawn out in red here for you, Mars opposite Pluto squaring the sun in Taurus a little bit further on in April. That is part of the regeneration. And so thinking about at this particular time of the full moon, it's likely to exacerbate any health problems that you have, or it's likely to exacerbate any worries you may have. I mean, that's the thing about planets moving through the 12th house. We can't really get a grip on them, and we tend to use our imagination or our intuitive functions. They're working overtime, but yet we don't have any clear facts or anything substantial to really, put our feelings onto and say, oh, now I know why I'm feeling that. So it can be a bit strange. And this full moon may bring all of that out, where you feel, I don't really know what's going on. I'm not sure that I'm altogether in control of this. it's a temporary thing, Taurus, and I know how important it is for all Taurians to be in charge and in control and to have your feet on the earth. And it's uncomfortable when you're in no man's land and things aren't settled, or they're not clear. But it's part of life, not all of it, and things will be clear, they will get clear. And learning to monitor yourself better when you aren't in charge, or you can't get your ducks in a row. That's part of learning how to manage something like that. Now, this full moon is also, it has to do with your systems. We've talked about health, the health system, but it's also about how your life runs. And this full moon is maybe showing you that I know it sounds very simple, that your daily routine may not be conducive to living your best life. There are too many things you're doing that need to either be, not done, or done at a different time or in a different way that's going to help you live your best life. And it's also about duties and responsibilities. And of course, at times we all feel the weight of our responsibilities, the burdens we have, and we don't like it. And this full moon may be what that does to you, make you feel that you're carrying burdens. But when we look at that and we think, duties, responsibilities, the stuff of Saturn, if you like, they are a necessary part of life. And if we see them as something, well, maybe loving them is too strong a word to use, but accepting them as part of life and not all of it is a way of handling them better. So this might be all useful advice to you in regard to this period of time. Now, when we come to that Mars-Pluto opposition squaring the Sun, which is gathering momentum from about maybe the 17th of the month, we're looking at things to do with, well, I've said this to a lot of signs, but it's because it's appropriate on a Mars-Pluto opposition. Push comes to shove. Now, we're going to be seeing that with various things in the world, the global situation. Push has come to shove, got to be done, got to happen, and, it's all or nothing. We're going to be seeing that in terms of global events, but it can happen in our lives as well. We can either come to that point where we think, if I don't do this now, I'll never do it, so I'm going to do it, which is a good motivation. But it can also be, I can't stand this anymore, I'm just going to detonate it, which is not so good. If you're going to detonate something, at least be ready for things to be blown up, right? Especially if you're an April birthday, or you have planets and points between about 0 and 4 degrees of Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, or Leo. You're right in the midst of this. And it is about really getting rid of things, eliminating the negative. It's about rebirth. It's about recycling. It's about a lot of things that are going to change life and change you at core level. So no wonder it's hard going, even if what is hard going is a beautiful thing. I mean, giving birth is incredibly painful, and tiny little newborns are very, very hard work, even though it's the most wonderful thing in the world. So don't get caught up in the idea that this is necessarily a time of bad things. It's just the stress and strain of the good things even that is causing you to have these emotions about, well, not only push comes to shove, but I can't take this anymore. That's something that we feel. But it's a good clearinghouse. And I think whatever happens around this late April period, globally, individually, just getting rid of a lot of stuff. And that's probably a very, very good thing. If we come to Gemini now and we look at this full moon, it's on the axis of creativity and collaboration. It's about the end of a gestation period. And I talked about this for Sagittarius as well, because it's the same axis, but the other way around. But it is a really good way of looking at things, that it takes 9 months for something to develop, well, an embryo to develop, and then there's a baby at the end of it. But we can have gestation periods for a lot of things. a lot of things that take time to come to fruition. And we nurture them and grow them, and here they are, ready to be delivered. And this full moon is all about delivery, in a way. Go back 6 months and look at the new moon in Libra, which was a solar eclipse, 2nd of October last year. Think about the things that may have begun at that time, the things that you got into, that you started, because they're at a finishing point here. They are showing you what they're made of. This can apply to a love affair. It can apply to a project that you've been dealing with. It can apply to a lot of things. Be creative with my advice here. But whatever it is, you're seeing it and thinking, has this got legs? So some Geminis are going to be ready to, take a relationship to another level. Others are going to have finished a project and it's ready for everybody to see it. It can also be a sense that you've been working on yourself for a while, and now you're beginning to see the benefits of all that work you've done on yourself. The sun is in the area of collaborations. So working as a team, the collective, whatever you see as a collective effort, this full moon has to do with that as well. So it may be that some business enterprise or some project you've been working on with a group of people has reached an end, or it's a point at which you realize, oh, this can't go on. This is, we're done and dusted here. Playing into all of this is the configuration I've shown you with red lines here. So you've got Mars opposition Pluto, Mars square the Sun square Pluto. So this is bringing something into being that takes an incredible amount of effort. I've talked about push coming to shove with this aspect. It's the easiest way of looking at it. And there are so many ways that can be, when you think about standing at the edge of a swimming pool or on a diving board and everybody's looking at you and you think, well, push has gone to shove. I'm going to have to dive off this board and see, what kind of dive I make. So it's that kind of thing. It can be doing something amazing and you're ready to do that leap. It can also be the point at which you say, I've got to tackle this because I can't live with it anymore. I can't deal with it anymore. Whether that applies to a relationship, whether it applies to an endeavor, business, whatever it is, dealing with it is what matters. And when I think about you as a sign Gemini, I mean, you're very adaptable. You're very, you can think your way around things and think of solutions, and you're very, very flexible in that way. You're not really someone who's fixed and entrenched in things, but sometimes what you don't, you let things go too far, or you've got so many irons in the fire, things are slipping out of your grasp. You can't make anything really work. And I think this particular configuration is saying, you've got to put all your energies into something to get it done or to get it where you want it to. But yet there's a fair amount of strife in this, as I talk about on my other video about this. And I said, you can sum it up as fire and fury. You can think about it as a fiery furnace, which creates beautiful objects, fine porcelain, or you could think of it in a very destructive way, burning the territory down. So it needs careful handling. But I think if you're ready to do something or to get something done, this is absolutely the kind of astrology you need to achieve it. Cancer. All full moons are important to Cancer because you're ruled by the moon. New moon, full moon, you're very responsive to this cycle. So here is this full moon for you on the most important axis, or one of the most important axes in the solar chart or in any chart, 10th house, 4th house. So the sun has been moving through the 10th house since the 20th of March. So all things related to your place in the world, which can mean career, it can mean your reputation, it can mean the things you do out in the world. So the sun has been moving through that part of the chart and making you aware of all sorts of things related to those items, those aspects of existence. Now, the moon at the opposite point, the moon will only have been moving through here for about 3 days, and the full moon will be exact on the 13th of April. But it sort of is bringing up a polarity, isn't it? So there can be something in here about work-life balance. So that maybe an incident makes you aware that you're out of whack, that there's too much time being spent on work and not enough time at home with the family, being in your private inner sanctum space, and that's got to change because it's unhealthy. On the other hand, it could be the other way around, and you're recognizing that your family and the things that you are doing at home base are preventing you from living your life in a way that you want to live it, and to, whether that's to do with your material world or whether it's to do with your career, whatever it may be. So that balance, there needs to be balance here. But sometimes, of course, things just happen, and it becomes a time when ends of chapters happen, whether it means it's time for another job because this one's over, whether it's time for retirement, or whether out of the blue a job ends. And that means you've got to look at the balance of life and all sorts of things in order to see where you go next, where is your next job. But it can be the reverse. And so we have the idea that, is it time to make moves on the home front? Or are there things to do with your relatives, particularly parents, or parental figures? Is this a time we become very concerned about them, or a time when decisions have to be made about them? Well, yes, it may be that. Maybe, a decision has to be made about a parent or an elderly relative. So that's what this full moon is showing you. Also, I think in regard to the position of Chiron next to the sun and opposing the moon, and I've talked about this quite a bit on my other video about this full moon, that it is the existential pain, and that often when we look at Chiron, it's the thing we can't fix, and it's a giant pain to us all the time, that it's accepting it and recognizing that that pain is part of our humanity. And so the events that are coming into your life, the situations that are in front of you, they may all be about that. So it's illumination, that full moon. We're also looking at that other alignment that I've drawn out there, Mars, Pluto squaring the sun, Mars being in the second house of money, Pluto being in the area of financial relationships, squared by the sun. Does it mean that there has to be some tough talking going on about your finances? Maybe it's linked to a business enterprise, or maybe it's about a partnership and the balance of power in a relationship, which is related to money. Who says what about money? That's what that Mars-Pluto squaring the sun means in the case, your case, when we're looking at Cancer being ruling the first house, either as the sun sign or as the ascending sign. But out in the world there is so much strife, isn't there? And as we've seen, as I again talked about in my other video, we know the impact that all these tariffs are having on the world, and, making our lives very hard. And this may be, again, something related to that outer world thing impacting your inner world and making a difference to your finances. Leo, this full moon for you falls on the axis of communication. And it's an important axis because it is about journeys in knowledge, experience, and journeys in miles. It's about your outlook, your horizons. So on a very mundane level, we could say, well, this is about taking a journey. And at Easter, a lot of us go on journeys, whether we're having an Easter break or we're hooking up with people, our family, our friends. And so maybe this is quite literal. The journey is a journey. On the other hand, we're probably looking at it metaphorically, and we're thinking about coming to the end of a journey, whether it is to do with a relationship, to do with a project, to do with anything you might care to consider. And if we go back to the new moon in Libra, which began this cycle, and we go back to October the 2nd last year, think about what began at that time and where you are now with that beginning. Is it the end of a journey with that project, that situation, that relationship, whatever it may be to different Leos? Because the idea of the end of a journey means a good part of it is done. And maybe it's over. On the other hand, maybe it's ready to go to a new level. This is all about understanding as well. And when we make understandings, we draw conclusions. How about that for a full moon? Closure and completion, conclusions and endings, but looking at it in the sense of understandings. And this full moon is about that. Have you finished working on something, learning something, gathering that information, so that now you are in possession of a whole lot of information that's going to take you to the next level? Many things about this are to do with your life horizons. And I think all of us live such busy lives, we don't necessarily think about, where do I want to be? 10 years down the line, 5 years down the line, 20 years down the line. But this full moon is about that. It's about where you are now and where you want to be further down the line. So the full moon is illuminating that for you so that you can examine it, find a perspective on it, and that in turn will shape what you do next. Now, of course, both the full moon is squaring Mars, as well as Mars coming into your sign and squaring and opposing Pluto and squaring the sun, which it does a little bit later on in April, around the 27th, but it's getting there from about the 20th, the 19th, 20th. My goodness, that configuration is building. So we are thinking about, what are the things in your life that have done their time, are now rotting? Maybe that's too strong a word, but you know how it is with a bunch of flowers that you have in a vase, and you look at them and every day they're beautiful, and suddenly you notice that a leaf has gone brown, or that the head of a rose is now listing. And it is a sense of, oh, that beautiful thing is now, it's dying. But that's part of life, and I'm obviously talking in metaphors here. I don't mean death itself in the literal way. It's the death of something. Is it the death of a relationship, the death of love? Or is it the death of some pattern or aspect of yourself that has been holding you back and is of no use anymore? And you need to realize you don't need that habit, you don't need that pattern, you don't need that behavior. Now, all that's well and good, but we see the relationship axis here involved. And, sometimes whether it's a work relationship or it's a business relationship, we want that relationship to continue, but what it's doing to us, we don't like. And when we face that and we think about, this can't go on, that's the kind of realization we might make on that Mars-Pluto squaring the sun moment. What you do about it from that point needs to be thought about. Do you want to simply light the touch paper and blow it to blitz? Is that what you want to do? Because that's what you're going to do if you do it at this time. On the other hand, is it the realization that you can then figure out a way to deal with the situation so that it isn't so self-destructive? There's nothing like a Mars-Pluto opposition squaring the sun to bring out our self-sabotaging impulses. Don't self-sabotage, do something different. Now, it's not that this period of the year can't be fabulous. And as I've said to a lot of the signs, you know, if you're getting married, if you're having a beautiful celebration and you're listening to me talking about this kind of thing, you're thinking, oh, well, what's that got to do with my great event I've got in store? Well, you know, great events do have their stress factor. The parallel of birth is a good one, because in order to get the baby born, you have to go through labor pains. And this is what looks like labor pains. And probably what comes out the other end is going to be beautiful. No, you know, no risk, no reward, but no effort, no reward, I would say, in this particular case. So there's lots of good that can come out of this. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about end of journeys and looking at where you want to be down the line, thinking about the power of that Mars-Pluto opposition, push coming to shove. But also at the helm of all of this, Leo, is you making choices and decisions. And it's time to make wise choices, not choices based on your gut, which would be self-sabotaging. Virgo, for you, this full moon is occupying the second house and the eighth house. The sun is in the eighth house, the moon in the second house. And this is the axis of self-worth. It's about values. It's about security, stability, how much money you have in the bank, what people are paying you, how people treat you, what other people give you, how you share finances, how you deal with things that amount to values in life, shared values. So this full moon is all about that coming to the surface of a relationship or a situation, playing into all of that. And full moons are illuminating, but there are also times of closure and completion, so that if what is illuminated is showing you that it's not fit for purpose, then it is time to end it. Now, we could look at relationships in this context, we could look at jobs, we could look at friendships, we could look at practices, habits, behaviors. There's just so many ways we could look at the full moon illuminating what's going on, and thereafter there is a decision. But sometimes things just come to a head because of someone else's actions or because of something that happens out in the world. Suddenly there we are looking at something that we absolutely have to deal with. And when we look at these other factors playing in, Mars is square the full moon, but also Mars opposing Pluto, and ultimately the sun squaring that opposition, which is all about push coming to shove and things being done and dusted and out with the old, in with the new. It's also about rebirth. It's about recycling. And whenever we're looking at these big configurations like this, we want to apply it to ourselves, don't we? And we want to say, look, how can I make use of this? Not how can I just wait and see what happens to me? How can I make the most of this? Well, Virgo, it means stepping up to the plate. It means the things you're reluctant to do, maybe you hope someone else will do them, or you feel that you're not worthy enough, or you don't want that in your life. You didn't sign up for it, and so why are you dealing with it? But you know, whatever it is that represents that that thing that must be tackled, done, that needs to be tackled and done. Pushers come to shove here. And we could look at money matters being in the midst here. We could be looking at the way somebody's treating you and how it's wrong, and how you want to assume the power over a situation and not have other people using their power over you. How you deal with it in the reality, how you actually step up to the plate, how you actually deal with it, is something that needs to be thought about. But I know from old, and also understanding the sign of Virgo very well, that it's what it feels like within you, and that sense that you know what's right, and you know what's right for you. And if you are acting from that point, you won't go wrong. It's when you start getting self-conscious or you start doubting yourself, or you start wondering what other people will say, or what will happen as a result of X, Y, Z, then you lose the plot. But it is coming back to this sense of, in your own self, what you know is right, what you know is of value, what you know you want to do. And that is your strength, that is your arm. I talk about fire and fury in connection with this full moon and the Mars-Pluto setup, all of it in my other video. And I think if we can get that image and think, you know, we're all Joan of Arc. I've been talking about Joan of Arc quite a lot because of Neptune. And, you know, think about her, this humble, you know, village peasant girl who listened to her God and decided to save France and go to war with the Dauphin for France. You know, that's a great story. But we all have those situations in our lives that feel like going to war, as this, you know, particular configuration is about. And we need to step up to the plate and go to war, Virgo. I hope I've rallied you to the cause here. It is, as I said, it doesn't mean that this can't be a period of very welcome developments, but even the wonderful things that are happening, whether babies are being born and weddings are happening and all those other lovely things in life, they all come with a cost. You know, giving birth is painful. Getting married, oh my goodness, how many toes get stepped on? How many things can potentially go wrong? So it's this kind of setup, even with wonderful things going on, there is this sense of conflict, of having to deal with things you'd rather not deal with, but you've got to deal with them. Okay, Virgo? So that really is my whole roundup of the zodiac, all 12 signs. And I don't really want to, you know, give another sort of summation of what I've been talking about. We can leave that to the other video. But I think, again, this idea, it's so interesting when I do these sun signs, I really get into the clothes of Libra or Scorpio, whatever it is, and really feel what you're up against. And in a way, the challenges that we face, the human challenges we face, are common to us all. We all have them. No matter who we are, we have them. And I think when we see these configurations and we put them in the shape in the chart, it gives us a kind of angle on it that I hope and I believe that we're better for knowing about it. We have some tools at our disposal to fashion something out of it that becomes purposeful. Astrology is a guide. It's there for our use. It's not there to sow fear in us or to trust into fate all the time. It's about, what does it say about us? How can it help us? So thank you for being here, and I look forward to speaking to you on my next video very soon. Bye for now.